Sounds good. This is gonna be a fun one, man. It was cool. Like while we were chatting to everybody here, while we were kind of waiting around talking old racing stories, it was a good time. Awesome.
Yeah, and I want to thank everybody that's signing up and coming to join us for this discussion.
Yeah, so we've got a pretty good attendance already. So I'd say we could probably kick things off right here. So just a really quick kind of housekeeping notes for everyone in attendance. We are going to do a dedicated Q&A session with Randy at the end. Please use the chat while we're going through these subjects. If you've got questions while we're on it, comment, use them. We want to hear from you. If you disagree with something that we're talking about, let us know so we can dig into what that sounds like. So we're going to spend the first part of this going through what Randy sees as what the guidelines should be for overtaking moving forward. We're going to go show some videos of what not to do, what to do, and why, and then we'll finish it off with a Q&A session. So it's my pleasure to welcome an old teammate of mine from over a decade ago now, actually, Randy. Thanks for joining us, and looking forward to hearing from you.
Dion, thanks a million for having me on Racers 360. And tell me, I think it was pretty much when you won your first IMSA race, at least in the VW, I think you beat me.
Yeah, we were in mixed conditions at Watkins Glen when you were in the I was in the VW.
Great job. Great job. And guess what? I could have gone into your vortex of danger, but I didn't.
I'm glad you didn't, because I tell you what, that same race, the first team owner, Kevin Doran, who was the DP team owner at that time, was on his trailer watching us, and he gave me the opportunity to go and test for them because you didn't. And because you helped me win that race a little bit.
Well, I don't know about that. You earned it. I would have passed you if I could, buddy.
Yeah, that was
I would have passed you.
Conditions when you're on slick tires. I miss that, especially at Watkins Glen.
Oh, those are the best conditions. The changing conditions where you never know. You're kind of gambling at every corner.
Yeah.
And that was part of my whole long career. I started racing in 1985 when I was 27 years old, 26 years old. I had a late start. And over the years, I ran into some people, especially in the first couple years. I want to apologize to Paul Hacker. Paul, I wish you were still on this planet. I apologize for hitting you at Portland. It was totally my fault, and I didn't know because no one ever explained it to me. I just went out and drove. I just figured, you know, if I was nearby, I could zoom by you. And over the years, I started to get a feel for what kind of passing situations worked and what didn't. But I never put it into words. I never tried to get it on paper. I just had this feeling that came from experience, which I believe a lot of you out there in the racing world have, and a lot of you newer drivers don't have, which is why it always makes me nervous to race you. And I like racing an old pro. I remember some of the guys I ran with, Johnny O'Connell, Andy Pilgrim. They know how this works. And everybody pushes the limits, and that's part of the racing. But if we don't get it right, we can just walk right up and stab a man in the back, or we take a driver out. It's just like shooting somebody walking away from you in a duel when it's not time to turn around yet. When is that time? Well, 16 years ago, I got an opportunity to do a column for the SCCA magazine Sports Car. And in that column, I started having to think more because I needed to write something every month. I didn't want to do it. I mean, I didn't want the responsibility of trying to come up with an idea every month for 16 years. Can you imagine? And so month by month, I'd sit down, all right, what am I going to write about this month? And it was through those thought processes and the racing I was doing. I've won more than 90 professional races. I've run probably, I don't know, 600, 700 races. And I learned certain ideas and principles that made sense. I learned that there were natural laws that made racing work or not work. And one of those fundamental laws was based on What can you see on a driver's vision? Don't hit what you can see. And the next step beyond that is, well, who can see whom when you're entering a corner? The vast majority of crashes happen when a driver turns for the corner. Two cars, the hands are making this move for a corner. And in those situations, you have to ask yourself, who can see whom? Now, I've already had a couple of interesting comments from drivers who are saying, look, what are you saying? You throw away your rear view mirrors? Are you saying that if we're at the turning point, we can just rip into a corner no matter what's going on? And that completely absolves you of responsibility? I've had experienced great drivers tell me, look, Randy, I believe you're supposed to know where all the cars are all the time. They've got a responsibility. And I ask those drivers, how are you supposed to know where a car is when you can't see it? Can the other guy see you? Well, if you can't see him, I guarantee he can see you. And that gives him all the cards. He can see you. He knows where you're going. If you're leading, you're going to drive the racing line. You're going for the apex. And if you can't see it, uh-oh. Dion, I'm getting a call, it appears.
Can you mute your phone at all?
Oh, okay, gotcha, sorry. I don't know, let me get rid of that.
First time webinars.
There. My phone confused. Okay, sorry, folks. Where was I? I think I was in the vortex of danger.
Just getting into it.
Yes, when the car ahead is going for a corner, the car behind him can see him. That's the big question. Who can see whom? All of that changes when a driver gets into the vision of the car he's attempting to pass before that car turns for the corner. Now there's always a little gray area. Were you there? Weren't you there? But when you're in the vision of the other car, of the car you're attempting to pass, that car can see you without his mirrors. You're in the way. You are taking the line away. You, at the very least, have earned space. You have earned racing room. That driver can see you, and none of us should ever drive into a car that we can see. This is perfectly natural. This is the natural laws of passing mean don't hit what you can see, which means if you're arriving at your turn-in point, you're getting ready to turn and boom, the nose of a car appears in your forward vision, your peripheral vision. That guy, congratulations. He has earned the right to some racing room. Otherwise, if you drive down on the normal line, you're going to hit him, you're going to have a crash. It's going to be your fault because you could see him. Now, if he's still back here somewhere, you're like, oh, where is he? Where is he? You don't know where he is. You don't know what he's doing. He does know where you are. He does know what you are probably doing. And guess what? Once you turn for the corner, once you're cranking that wheel into the corner, where are your eyes? I wish I could hear you guys. Where do you look? You look where you want to go. You have to look ahead to go where you're going. What is the turn-in point anyway, right? When your car reaches the turn-in point, what choices do you have? Can you keep going straight? No, the road is turning. That's what makes it where the whole world changes, is when the lead car turns for the corner. He has to. He's running out of road. He's got to turn. It's time. If you want to pass him, you need to be into his vision before he has to turn. That's what Terry Earwood and I are talking about with these safe, successful passing rules. And in this first demonstration that we're looking at now, you can see this car is not in the peripheral vision of the car ahead of him. Now, where does that start? It's somewhere around the A pillar of a sedan car, or around the helmet or rear view mirror of a Formula car. There's a little gray area there. Were you really in there? Were you not? If you're not sure, don't go. And that's how a lot of crashes happen. You gotta have an advantage.
I think that's so especially true in high-speed corners. Like what you're saying right now, I know we had when we were leading the championship in GTD, we were leading the race at Lime Rock, and a faster car was coming up. It was actually Connor Daly driving the LMPC, and my teammate committed down for the downhill. And the downhill you can't turn later. Like you have to commit. And then Connor got to the right rear tire of my teammate, and they took each other out. It was way too late. So I think especially true for high-speed corners where there is one line. You can't turn a little bit later. And also really good to think about for different class racing, right? If you're in a faster car or slower car, all of this still applies. So sorry to jump in there. I just wanted to add that little bit.
No, I appreciate the backup, man. And the downhill is an excellent example where you don't have a choice.
No.
Once you commit to that corner, and that happens at the turn-in point, there's no moving around or going a car wide. You have to adjust that early. Now, guess what? You can drive like a fool, and you see another fool coming in on you, and they're inexperienced, or if you want to preserve yourself, you do need to do everything you can to read another car and decide whether or not they're going to make a stupid late move. Because you can still save yourself by slowing down more and going wide if you think that guy's going to make a stupid late move. And it's a good question, because a lot of times we're going to act like we might make a stupid late move to try to get you to move over so I can pass you. So each situation is different. There's never a time where you can just say, oh, the rule book's going to protect me. I'm going to close my eyes and drive like this. Of course not. Common sense, people. But guess what? Once you turn for a corner, your mirrors don't work well anymore. They're pointing the wrong way, or they're that convex mirror where you can't tell exactly where that guy is. And your eyes should not be looking in your mirrors anyway. You got to look where you want to go. And that's what this vision is all about. So Dion, we want to move to the next page?
Absolutely. Just to kind of reinforce everything here, another good example in the bottom left of good car placement, I would say, on the overtaking car.
I wish I could hear everybody's thoughts, because
make sure you drop them in the chat if you've got them for Randy, and I'll read them out loud for you, Randy.
Sorry, awesome. I can't wait for the Q&A.
Yeah.
And so here we go in the blind spot situation is this guy's turning for the corner. Now, can he see that red car in his mirror? Probably. Don't you think, Dion, that maybe the yellow car can see the red car?
I know some drivers I've raced against that absolutely not, but majority probably see it.
Well, Dion, if you're driving that yellow car, at this point, are you looking in your mirror?
No, absolutely not.
I'm not looking in my mirror. I'm like, if I don't see a nose come into my peripheral vision when I'm turning in,
it's my corner.
I'm going.
Yeah.
And if I know there's a guy there, I'm aware of that. And I'm like, if it shows up later, I'm going to do what I can. But this red car has not made a pass. And this is in the brake zone, people. The brake zone. This is way before you turn for the corner, frankly. Mm-hmm. And the reason I call it a vortex of danger, you can see that triangle that's inscribed there. Oops. From the turn-in car to the apex on the side of the road. That is a triangle. And at this moment, the guy in the red car sees a hole, right? People, have you been there? Has there been a guy behind you who sees that and says, I'm in there, I got this, I got a hole, and they go for that? Well, guess what? Unless you're going a lot faster than that yellow car, that hole closes very rapidly. That's why it is a vortex, and that's why it's dangerous. It's because it's getting smaller in a hurry, and it ain't gonna work unless the yellow car is very slow. And at the end of the proposal, the guidelines, we talk about that. And there's a different situation where you're catching a car that is very slow, that has caused a lot of heartache, because I know a lot of driver's schools teach hold your line. And what hold your line means is be predictable. It means don't pull out of the way. But hold your line does not mean that when you're slow and you know who you are, and there's a really fast car catching you right here as you turn in, that you should turn right in front of him. No. You've already seen that guy coming down the straight because you're a good driver and you used your mirrors on the straightaway where they work. And you're like, oh, I'm in a bug-eye Sprite and that GT1 Camaro is coming 50 miles an hour faster, and he'll be by me before I even begin to reach the apex. So I'm not going to turn down in front of him. That's what I call throwing yourself in front of a speeding train. Never throw yourself in front of a speeding train. And actually, we've seen a couple of really great examples of that a few years ago at Le Mans, where little GT cars pulled right in front of prototype cars that they could have and should have known were coming and could have seen. And I suspect somebody told them in the one driver school they did before they went to Le Mans that they should hold their line. No, hold your line means predictable. Don't pull out of the way. Don't change because the guy behind you has already made his decision where he's going to go by you.
It's actually, what we always kind of did was just a small lift as you approach a brake zone. It doesn't cost much time. It's super easy to do. You're not moving. You're not turning later. You just see, oh, they're going to catch me right in this brake zone. Let me just lift early, let them go, fall in behind them, and you'll both be faster over the distance anyway, for the most part.
Dion, you are on it, my man. And we're not talking about jamming on the brakes. We're talking about you'd make it easy. I was just coaching a good friend of mine this way in a endurance race. Make it easy. Don't resist a guy that's going to pass you anyway in an endurance race, and sometimes in any race. But a little bit of a lift, a little bit early on the brakes, make it easy. That guy goes by you. You follow him through the apex, and both of you will be faster. That's a secret that pro drivers have to turning consistent lap times, even in traffic. And guess what? You crash less.
Yeah. This is, I think, what we're really covering right now. Yes, it's great if you're a beginner, you just get going, but it's so true for anyone that does multi-class racing. Like, this is a golden nugget. There's always a bit of a dance, and there's always communications. And I know that we aren't covering this right now. This is a higher level technique, but if I'm coming into a corner like the downhill where they're not quite there, everything's subtle. I'll subtly move my car just a little bit to say, hey, not here. But then as we approach turn one, I'll lift a little bit early and I'll make it easy on them. So there's always a little bit of give and take. And I promise you, what Randy said earlier is you'll start to learn who you race with. And if you're doing these small, respectful things where you're not rolling over, you're being kind of just communicative and working together, people will know that, people will remember that, and they'll probably end up being more respectful around you at the end of the day as well.
You bet. You earn respect, and then you earn little tiny favors. Mm-hmm. Where a guy could have stuck it in there, made life hard for you, but he didn't, because he's like, that VW GTI on the APR team is cool. He's got good deal over and over, and I'm going to be cool to him.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's surviving. Surviving, which is your first. In order to finish first, you must first finish.
Absolutely.
Now we're looking at straightaways, and straightaways are really different. Why? How much can you see when you're on the straightaway? Do your mirrors work on the straightaway? Yeah, they do. Mirrors work great on the straightaway. You can see the car behind you if your mirrors are even still on the car, mind you, but you can see everything on the straightaway. And so it's a very different situation. You don't need to get into the driver's peripheral vision because he can see you in his mirror. It's a completely different situation. So when you're driving down the straightaways, coming out of a corner, we start with just a fundamental concept that in terms of blocking, which is, it's not that field of vision thing, but in terms of blocking, you come out of a corner, the rule of racing that works for everybody in the modern world of civilized competition is you get one move. You come out of a corner, you get to choose the left or the right. And please do choose the left or the right. Don't drive right down the middle of the road unless you're Dion and me and you're racing for the win and you're trying to confuse me. It's okay. But choose a side, and you only get to choose that once. Once you move over, say you want to protect the inside because you think this car's got a shot at you in the next corner. You're committed. You can't move back. He can. He can do whatever he wants. And the guy behind you, if he just gets an overlap on you of just like a bumper, if he's just coming up on you, it's too late for you to make that move. You got to make your move before that car gets to you, before he's close enough that it's dangerous and it could cause contact or a crash. This is a crash I have actually tragically seen several times at the SCCA runoffs heading for the checker. On probably two cars close together in the last corner. One of the guys moved inside to defend. He doesn't get as good a run off the corner. The guy behind him is catching him on the straight, and he pulls over to block, but it's too late. The other car has already got a nose. If you got a nose inside the bumper of the car ahead of you, heading for the checkered flag to win the runoffs, are you going to back off? I don't think so. I'm not going to. It's too late. Yet this guy comes over and keeps coming and maybe wraps himself around the front, and 6 cars crash, and it's horrible and it shouldn't have happened. And that's why we describe this situation. Again, it's natural. It's a natural law. Once you get in there, this guy, if he still has mirrors, he can see you. He knows what you're doing, and you're coming by him on that side of the road, and it's too late to move over. This guy has earned that line.
Yeah.
And
I think the one way I like to word it as well is the overtake and the defend both should really come at corner exit. So like you set up your overtake by getting a good corner exit to get the drive into the next corner. When I defend my position, I immediately know, oh crap, that wasn't a very good exit. I immediately want to start defending my position. I want to be proactive with it. It definitely doesn't come in the brake zone. I saw that at a Sonoma race into turn 7, a Formula V race, where someone approached the turn 7 brake zone and no one was alongside them yet, but they were braking, and then the lead car decided in the brake zone, I need to move over. So I think the rules in the brake zone are even more drastic to where there should be no movement from the lead car. I don't know if you agree with that, Randy.
I couldn't agree more, because in the brake zone, it's too late.
Yeah.
Especially if you're not already there.
Yeah. So we have one question here from Alessandro for you, Randy. Alessandro asks, in F1, the overtaking driver must be at least halfway alongside the defender when they reach the apex. Is this a general rule for all racing organizations, or is it a gentleman rule not written that everyone-ish should follow?
Well, where is that rule written? I went over to Le Mans a few years ago to visit. I was looking for a ride, and I read the rules, the FIA rules. Not sure those are the same rules that apply to Formula One. And the FIA rules were very similar to the SCCA rules. They had a couple of lines about the responsibility for a safe pass lies primarily with the passing driver, but that does not absolve the driver being passed from any responsibility for a safe pass. That's all true, but incredibly vague. And if you know much more about the F1 rules than I do, and you probably do, because I have not tried to read up on them, Dion.
Me neither, to be honest.
What I just heard does not sound like a good rule at all. It sounds like an absolute disaster.
Yeah, I would say the rule should be halfway alongside the defender at the turning point, not at the apex.
At the apex, it's way too late.
Yeah.
For the same reasons that I've been ranting about here.
Yeah,
The
exactly.
guy ahead, he can't see
We've got some good examples coming up here of why that's the case for sure. So hopefully that answers your question, Alessandro. So I think these are a great diagram showing exactly what we were talking about with your triangles earlier, Randy.
Yes, there's actually two vortexes. There's one on the way in and there's one on the way out. And on the way in, that's the tempting situation. It's like the sirens calling from the rocks in ancient, was it Greek mythology? It looks like you've got a shot, but you don't, because that car ahead is coming for the apex and there's not enough time to get in there unless you're a much faster car. And in that situation, you can hope that guy ahead of you sees you and is going to let you through and not come down on you.
But
and
to be honest, even then, like 99% of the times, I'm just bailing out as the faster car, as the faster driver. I mean, I was chatting with Angelica earlier about the Thunderhill 25 hour. We were teammates there together, right? And that's a race where I am just being ultra conservative because there's no way I know everyone out there. Way too many drivers, the skill levels all over the place. And I'm just, if I'm not all the way alongside, I'm probably bailing out of a move because it's not worth it. Like, it's live to fight another day. So just a small caveat on that. Like, yes, if you're way faster, go for it. But for the most part, err on conservative, I would say here at least.
I do a lot of these budget endurance races right now, like the Lucky Dog Racing League and WRL World Racing League, Champ Car, American Endurance Racing. I love them. Long races. And part of the reason I love them is people let me drive their cars. And part of the reason people let me drive their cars is because I, knock wood, almost never touch anything. And that is certainly my goal. And one place where I get in trouble is sometimes I miss yellow flags. Why is that? With all my experience, the chief steward calls me in and looks at me. He's like, Randy, really? Really? I'll tell you why. Because I'm that red car and I'm going 30 miles an hour faster than that yellow car. And I'm watching him like a hawk. And I'm going, is he going to turn? Is he going to turn? Is he going to turn? Meanwhile, over here, there's a yellow and I miss it. Yeah. And so I apologize for that. And I will try to be better. I promise, Eric Torgerson with Lucky Dog. You're right. And that's the entry vortex at danger. There's another vortex. It's on the exit. Say you've gotten up, you're trying to get a guy on the outside and you only get part way up. You're only as far as his rear wheel. That guy can't see you outside and behind him. If you hang on, he can't see you, you can see him. He doesn't know what you're doing because he can't see you. You ask yourself, what is he doing? What is that yellow car doing? You know darn well what he's doing. He's tracking out of that corner. How much room are you going to have? Well, he should leave me room. He can't leave you room if he can't see you. I know we're supposed to be aware of where all cars are at all times, especially in the exit vortex of danger. It's very hard to impossible to know if there's somebody who's come up and stuck a nose outside you. That's a very dangerous place to be. And when you're on the outside, even if they can see you, you need to be very aware that they might track you right off the road anyway, either because they don't know what they're doing or they're a jerk or whatever. You're in a vulnerable position when you're on the outside. And if that car on the inside can see you and does not track you out, then you know you're dealing with a civilized driver who knows what he's doing, who is somebody you want to race with, a colleague. You guys know that feeling where you can be next to somebody and they give you room, because a driver has to consciously make that decision to slow down a little more, turn a little bit more, to leave this car a car width and an inch, as P.D. Cunningham used to say, or a car width and 6 inches if you don't want to be dusting his decals.
Yeah, so one of our pro coaches, Ken Hill's joining us today as well, and he just said it so simply. It just said outside passes on exits, expect them to use the track. Just expect it. Simple and so true.
Yep, because that's what happens.
And
And
as you just referenced, the car width plus 6 inches, right? Give everyone room.
this is civilization on this page. If you get next to a car into his vision and you weren't quick enough to get past him, now you're racing side by side, folks. You've got to work with each other here. And if you're good to that person's going to be good to you, and the world is a better place to live. If you run them off the road or vice versa, it's Death Race 2000. It's not road racing. It's not a sport. It's some other strange, violent thing that the officials are going to do everything they can to avoid. And what that means is side by side, what I was just talking about, deliberately turning a little car to leave room for that car that you can see on the outside. And, or on the opposite, you can see him on the inside. You don't come all the way to the apex and put him on the curb or in the dirt. You leave that guy racing room, because that's good sportsman competition.
Yeah.
That's what we're
I
doing.
can't tell you how many times I get that red mist. If someone just doesn't leave me the room, man, does that piss me off. And now I really want to get this driver, right? And so sometimes also just being able to take a breath and relax and say, okay, he's or she is just not what I want to be racing like. You're a better driver than I am at that point, but it's good to be able to do.
Yes.
And then I think we talked a little bit about this one already as well, with just understanding that people are probably going to track out.
Yeah, that's the outside vortex again. That you maybe you get a nose on the guy around the apex, but outside, that guy doesn't know you're there. He doesn't know how far up you are, because where is he looking? He's looking ahead. He's looking down the track. And
you've got to be here. I can't get this thing to orientate the right way in the green box, but you definitely need to be wheel to wheel alongside for them to have any clue you're there.
Exactly, right. Any clue. If you're on the outside, you've actually got to be further up, because the driver's looking the other way, right? And if you're a quick, fast driver, running quick times, you're going to win this race. You are not looking over your shoulder in the middle of a corner trying to find some car you can't see.
No.
You can't avoid a car you can't see.
We had one question come in here that I think is a great question. How would you define dive bombing? It's extremely frequent in sim racing, for instance. I think it's extremely frequent in all of our racing. We've got some examples of that coming up here in a sec with some video, but how would you define the good old dive bomb?
Oh, buddy, I've lived some examples. A dive bomb is a passing attempt that goes into the vortex of danger. A dive bomb is a passing attempt after the lead car has turned for the corner. Now, why is that irritating? Why does that piss us off? Why do we call it a dive bomb? Because we can't see that guy, and he suddenly appears making a pass that requires you to move. That's another definition of a dive bomb. A dive bomb is a pass that requires the car you're attempting to pass to move, or you're going to hit it.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I'm trying to think of an example that disputes what I'm saying. Maybe someone can think of this, but I almost say any pass where the car is not at least halfway upside or like alongside my car as I turn in is a dive bomb. I can't think of an example that's not a dive bomb if they're not at least halfway upside my car. But maybe someone's got another example. Do you want to move on to some 3 quick videos and then go to Q&A? Does that sound good to you, Randy?
It sounds good, Neon.
Awesome. Let's go here. So I would say let's start with the good and then go worse and then bad at the end. How does that sound?
What about the ugly?
All righty. So
and the ugly?
the good, bad, and ugly. 1 second here. Now I've got too many things open here. I believe we all are looking at a Spec Miata race. Am I right here? Can you see that, Randy?
It sure looks like 2 Spec Miatas from where I sit.
Awesome. So what we're going to see here, and thanks again for everyone that sent in video here. We chose 3 of you to review. So Randy and I watched these ahead of time, and this is going to be, I think, the good. So let's just watch this really quick. I'm going to play it full speed. It may be a little choppy. Don't worry. We'll come back and go slow motion on what we're looking at was good.
If I may, Dion.
Yes.
What we're looking at right now, it appears to me the next corner is a right-hander.
Correct.
And so that car, which is number 81 and number 11, is defending.
Correct.
He's in the middle of the road there because he's defending. He knows this guy's got a shot at him and he doesn't want him to take him.
Yes. So they come out of a left-hander, coming up, setting up to a right-hander, defending position, good old over-under. This is an exciting race, side by side.
He was in hot, so he came out hot.
Yep. And what we love to see here is car width in 6 inches all the way through. Now, I don't know about you, Randy, but the one thing that I saw here was I probably wouldn't have kept here unless I really knew this other driver, right? Because we said earlier, expect them to truck out. But this is ideal, I would say. What do you think so far?
Yep. But the Miata we're in is getting a pretty good favor from the guy on the inside.
Yeah.
Because he's back there where he can't be seen. So he's getting a favor there.
And then we make the pass. So ultimately, I think, Randy, let me just back this up a little bit and show the exact area of what we're looking for. So we're coming in to the turn-in point. And I think, so we're really turning in here. And I think what you would be looking for would be about a half car width further up alongside this car right now. Would you say that's true?
Yes.
Yeah.
You bet.
Gotcha.
We're
Awesome.
not in the peripheral vision of the 111 car? The
81 or 111. Yeah, 111. There we go.
Yep. So we're making a move down the outside here, a brave move. And boom, guess what? He can see you now.
Yeah.
Maybe.
So this is, I think, a unique situation with a longer corner where you kind of have a double apex and you give yourself more time to get up there. But for everyone watching, I think if you don't know this 111 driver, you're probably bailing out of this right now.
Plus, how did you get up into his vision? You went faster than he did. It's possible that speed that you used on the way in, it changes your line so you're not going to be as quick on the way out. And that's kind of what happened here.
Mm-hmm. But, I mean, from my point of view, considering that both drivers probably knew each other, this is like ideal, right? Like I think both drivers give each other room. If you're comfortable with them, then that pass is totally fine. Like I would say this is obviously no contact, which is great, but ultimately I thought that was pretty damn good. I don't know what you thought, what your thoughts were, Randy.
No, that's two drivers working together.
Yeah, awesome. So let's go on to the bad here. And again, not to pick on anyone, and we appreciate you sending this in, but this is a good learning experience for all of us. So this is going to be turn 11 at Coda, and I think we've all seen a move what we're going to watch right here. And we'll back up, and I'll let Randy, you kind of go through it.
Okay, Dion.
Awesome. Everyone's bunched up together.
Little protecting. 1 down, 2 down, 3 down. Yikes!
So obviously everything ends up all right, but I don't think that means it was a move that we would like to see. This would be my definition of a dive bomb and entering the vortex of danger. So, Randy, what do you see here?
Well, this driver has committed now to going straight to the apex. And all these cars up here have no clue that that's happening. They're driving a more normal racing line. And so it puts those cars, right there. We're on that line going straight to the apex. And that's going to be great for a while. But when we get to the apex, where are we going? We're going straight-ish. Where are these cars ahead of us going? They're going right across our bow. That's part of the problem with a move like this. And the biggest problem is that these guys up here can't see you. You're not in their vision. And it's total vortex of danger. Look, it looks good. Oh, we're good. We're going to make this just fine. But these guys are turning. And that hole is disappearing. And okay, hold it, Dion, right there. Look at the angles. Think about the angles here. These cars ahead of us are almost perpendicular to us because they turned for the corner a long time ago. Like this guy dead ahead of us. He's got no idea there's a white Miata coming down the inside. And neither does the next guy. But fortunately, he's figured it out. And somewhere over there, there's a white Miata with a wing on it that is probably surprised, to say the least. Now, there's enough room here. You can kind of get away with this entry, or this driver got away with it. What's the exit going to be like from this corner? Terrible. It's so pinched. There's no speed on the exit of the corner. So on top of taking a chance of running into one of these cars, specifically the 102 here, which happened to see the Miata coming and got out of its way.
That was actually pretty impressive.
Pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Yep. And maybe because it was white. If it was gray, they might never have seen it in the pavement.
Yeah.
But the exit is going to be terrible from this corner. And so you survived the crash, but really slow on the exit.
You can see them pull away. There's one thing, a couple things here as well that I just wanted to point out really fast. Whoops, too long of a video. So for me, already, typically from this far back, passing this one car is already pretty aggressive in my opinion. You know, obviously, if we had just been straight and kept our hands straight at this point, then it actually would have worked out. I think we're close enough to where we are alongside this car to where there isn't an issue. It was a very aggressive move, but we get to this point, there's no turn-in point, I'd be pretty happy. What I would like to have seen is our driver just keep it straight here.
Straight on, yeah.
And yes, you wouldn't have overtaken this Miata right now, but it would have been a much less risky move, I would say.
Yes, and guess what? Much faster around this hairpin. Why? So this white Miata wouldn't be able to get away as quickly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Don't get greedy. Don't get greedy.
Yeah, it ultimately, you know, the way I kind of word this, and we do quite a few race analysis, and this is probably one of the most common topics that I would say. Racing is a very counterintuitive sport. I find most drivers need to spend less time on throttle to go faster. I find most drivers need to be closer to the car they're overtaking to be safer. We all think, I'm in a little hot, let me go further away. But now you're getting more into that blind zone that Randy identified. You're making the corner tighter. And I tell you what, not only is it harder for them to see you, but if they don't see you, the further apart you are, the harder the impact's going to be. If you're right alongside, not that we ever want to have contact, but if you're right alongside, usually it's a little dink, no harm, no foul. This one, though, when we have a full car width or so between cars, that's when we can get into big trouble. So I always want to be like right upside the car I'm passing. And it seems rude to people that are new to the sport, but it's actually me trying to help them know I'm here. It's audio, it's visual, and there's less chance of them hitting something really hard.
You got it. You're kind of flexing your muscle. You're taking that position.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's move on to the last video here. It's a super short one using some iRacing footage. And this is the ugly here. So this is a replay. Let me just go ahead and play it. Hopefully you guys can all see that. Out of nowhere coming in. And then another for good measure. So I would say this is in the vortex of danger.
That is clearly a very late move.
Yeah. Nowhere close to alongside of the car. The red car, I would never expect them. Like I'm turning in. I have no expectation for them to try anything, right?
Yeah, and you think about the yellow car. What is this guy thinking? Hold it right there for a moment. What is he thinking? This is another good example of that vortex. Back there, it looked good, but it ain't going to work because it's too late. Because now it's really over. You got no hope here. Actually, on this track, this guy could have gone over those inside curbs and maybe missed him. Maybe he was even trying to, and he didn't have the
too much speed at entry. Maybe he couldn't. But yeah. So just to make the point really clear, we wanted to use this just to say, if you're not halfway alongside, don't turn in and try to make it happen after the turn-in point.
Into his vision, or hers. Into that car ahead of you's vision without the mirrors, which don't work after they turn for the corner. Then you don't have it. You're not there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say if we're all good with it, we can transition over to a Q&A. So everyone watching from home, if you kind of just scroll over our faces, at the bottom you'll see the Q&A button. For everyone new, if just click on that. I'm sure a lot of our fans here are joining us probably know this. Open that, start asking some questions, and we're going to chronologically go through this and answer as many questions as we have tonight. Obviously, this is a super broad topic, and we're just trying to, I think, set the right guidelines or expectations. Randy, I actually want to ask the first question for you, and it actually came from Ken earlier in the day. When you're setting up this overtake and you're popping, looking to the inside, how are you going, what are you using for reference points as you approach the brake zone? Are you looking for the car to dive? Are you looking for your brake zones? How are you managing all of this?
Before I consider that pass, I'm watching that car ahead of me, and I'm figuring out what's he good at, where is he good, how is he driving, and I already know I have an advantage before I attempt to pass. You cannot just pop out and pass another good car. This is the greatest mistake that almost good racers make, is they think, well, it's the last lap of the runoffs, I'm gonna go for it. And the guy ahead of you is fast. You're going down the straight. You're not any closer than you were any other lap. You're just gonna pull out, and all of a sudden, magically, you're gonna be able to get in there hot enough with a good car. You can pass him? No. So before that ever happens, I've already calculated that I know I can get this guy because he's slower than me in one way or another. It all happens before I ever make the attempt.
That makes sense for sure. I always sort of, when you're alongside and you're, driving down to that brake zone, I always felt that I needed to have two reference points. For me, it was the front nose of the car I'm overtaking, and it's my usual brake marker backed up by just a little bit. And I kind of just waited for whatever happened first. And I always loved when I broke earlier on the inside and the person I'm trying to overtake broke too late, drives right off the track, and I can turn in and go. That's actually probably my favorite overtake at the end of the day. All righty, so starting to get some
intimidation.
Yeah, totally.
That's a good move. You do it in the brake zone.
So our first question for me is I need to learn how to first, and Ken, you might need to coach me on this one. Ken Hill was asking, he wants to know when Randy or Dion are going to come out and ride some motorcycles with him.
Tomorrow.
Yeah, I know, Randy, you've got some good experience on that side, so you would kick my butt to start off with there. All righty. From Angelica, from my video at COTA, and we were using her video in that turn 11, what should I have done different since the Global MX-5 hit its brakes so early? We're in the same class. The two Hondas are also in the same class, and I was trying to get closer to the front. So while we answer that, why don't I pull that video back up again? That is probably the most helpful thing. So Randy, what would you have liked to have seen different in this situation?
Well, you just did an excellent description of that, Dion, is when you pull out to pass the guy that broke real early, you go by him, you go straight, you stay wide so you don't compromise your exit. It'd be interesting to watch down the straightaway what happens.
So staying straight like this, and then...
Yes, and then the white Miata with the wing, then there's a question as you're getting down here, am I going to get him or aren't I? But you'll be over there near him, so you get a good run around the corner.
Yep.
That was a very brave late move. So lots of bravery, but maybe a little bit more strategy and a little bit more thinking ahead to getting a good exit too, so the Hondas don't get away, and etc.
Yeah, absolutely. So our next question is, how much distance laterally is good when coming upside or coming up alongside a competitor? I'm assuming they mean like what's the right distance between cars? And correct me if I'm wrong. Leave a comment in the chat box if I'm wrong on that.
Well, that's easy. Don't touch him.
Yeah.
You can be really close, but the closer you are, the more risk there are, because cars don't always go perfectly straight, do they? There's bumps and there's toe out and there's handling tricks, and you need a little bit of room, because anytime you're touching another car, you're risking damage. You could cut a tire. You could knock a valve stem off. You could realign your car. It's so easy to damage your car with a risky move that did not pay off. All of your racing is risk management. And so as close as you dare, knowing you're not going to hit them and risk damaging your car or taking them out. Sometimes cars touch real lightly, excuse me, Dion, touch real lightly and the wheels just kind of catch, right? You've seen that. It's just like a rub. It should be just a rub, but on sports cars, like TCR, especially a good example, the wheels stick out more than anything else. And tires are sticky. And wheels often have spokes. And they can do a light rub and catch and just throw the other guy right off the track or break his suspension. NASCAR cars and prototypes often have smooth sides like a battleship or like an Ironside warship. So they can bang each other, and it's a very different world from sports cars where the wheels stick out and you're touching tires. Touching tires is dangerous, so leave enough room you know you're not going to.
Yeah, actually, so Angelica just sent in another video as well, and what you described is exactly what happened to her. Turn 6 at Road America, they were side by side next to the 5, and they just lightly touched and spun in the entry. We've all been there. It's one of those things, you know, there's no 6 inches is the right area. I look at it the same way. I'm as close as possible to that car, and you kind of have a feel, right? If you're in a type of car that wags a little bit with the rear tires, like the more production cars, the GTIs, they love to move around under the brake zone, right? So you give a little bit more road, but in the GT3 cars where it's race car, it's planted, like you're almost touching mirrors at that point. So, all righty, let's start going through some more questions here. From Alessandro, as Zion knows, I do time trials with the objective to start wheel-to-wheel racing soon. What would be the right path to go wheel-to-wheel on top of the license? Is there a minimum of years of time trials you'd recommend? Is there a specific path to follow you would suggest? And at the 25 hours of Thunder Hill, there's some great drivers and there's some not great drivers as well. So what would you recommend to someone that's not wheel-to-wheel racing yet but wants to?
Well, number one, what's your budget? Number two, there's a pretty clear path right now if you can afford new cars, and that's Formula 4, 3, 2, 1, right? Does that make sense, Dion?
Yeah, I mean, I would say there's a lot of different ways to go about it. For me, on the wheel-to-wheel, like being intimidated to go from non-passing events to passing events, I think it's made too big of a deal in our sport. Like, I don't think all of a sudden everything is different. I would just sort of say, and I know Alessandro quite well. He's a good friend, so maybe it's easier for me to speak to him. I would say you're ready. Like, go out. He's probably done, correct me if I'm wrong, a year or two of HPDE track days, time trial events. He's fast. Haven't had a history of incidents. Once you're somewhat comfortable just driving the race car and you feel like you can notice a car is coming up behind me and I'm able to give a point by, if you can do all of that, I would say you're probably ready to go wheel-to-wheel racing. I don't know if you agree with that, Randy.
Yes, indeedy. And yeah. I also think doing HPDEs in an open wheel car is kind of dangerous because I assume, Alessandro's, there aren't many open wheel cars that had HPDEs I've ever seen.
I don't think I've ever seen one either.
And in your 1,100-pound Formula car, you do not want to be hit by a 3,800-pound AMG GT.
Yeah.
So in a lot of ways, open wheel racing can actually be safer than an HPDE because at least you're in other lightweight cars with other drivers that are as exposed as you are.
Yeah.
Well, on the less expensive scale, depending on where your budget is, there's SCCA club racing where you can get yourself a Formula Ford, which have very stock-based engines that last a long, long time. Or the Star Mazdas, they still run those?
No, the Star Mazdas, I think, are mostly gone. I would say, from my perspective, it's Spec Miata is a great place to start. I know Alessandro's out here in the Bay Area. There's a great Formula Ford group out here. They get 50 or 60 Formula Ford cars that are unbelievable. At the top, it's great drivers. At the back, not so great drivers, but people are pretty respectful and historic vintage racing for the most part. So it's a nice way to dip your toes in. Gosh, there's so many options. I would honestly pick a class that is pretty common. There's Spec E30, Spec E46, Spec Racer Ford, Spec Miata, Formula Ford. I would say like those are probably the 5 classes to look at to start with, and just get out there is kind of what I would say. Don't overdo it or don't overthink it.
I've had some great experiences in vintage Formula Ford groups also. Denver has a really active group, and I ran in a 40-car field, and it was terrific. And there was a lot of talent at the front too.
Yeah, and so the cars, they don't have a ton of horsepower, but they're still pretty fast. Like I'm looking at the Formula Ford racers out here. I mean, these are 1970s Formula Fords, so maybe they're not the safest modern cars, but at Sonoma, I want to say they're doing like 146s, 145s even, which is like a GT3 car pace. But you know, it's a tenth of the cost of a GT3 car, just off the first cost.
900 pounds.
Yeah, awesome. So from Jeffrey, Jeffrey, I might need you to make a comment here. It says, in the video, could the passing car have passed on the right? Would have been safer. Jeffrey, I'm going to need you, if you can, in the comments, let me know which video you're talking about. I think you were talking about the Coda video, but just let me know. We'll come back to your question here. So just jumping over to Sam really quick. How would you go about passing a car that drives down the middle of the track?
That's easy. Pass them on the inside of the next corner. Well, on what will be the inside of the next corner. That's your first choice.
Yep. I would also say, I'm just going to try to pull up a video here for an example, like heading into turn 12. Wow, I suck at controlling videos today. I would just say, let's pretend, and hopefully this is helpful, that this white car, I cannot get these square to draw where I want it to. So let's say this white car is more here. I would go down the inside here even. You know, if there's still room down the inside of the racetrack, I would just go to the inside. And again, I'm looking at my reference points. I know if I'm going that much farther to the inside, I need to make sure I'm definitely braking earlier than I normally brake, right? But if they're down the middle of the track, there should be room on the left. There should be room on the right. So I would still make the move, or like Randy said, do the over-under. Actually, Nathan, I should have brought that up, had a good example of that in his video as well. Let me go back to that one. On this video, we had a good example of kind of what to do, the good old over-under technique, which is always fun. Let's see here. No, alongside. Where was that? Boom.
It was at the beginning.
Yeah, right here, right? Driving down the middle. This is what Randy was talking about. Going around the outside, cutting back to the inside. Boom. If this next corner was a right-hander, this move's done. It's Nathan's corner. Just so happens that it's a left-hander and he had to fight for it a little bit more. But I think those are the 2 options that I would say as well.
And every situation's different.
And that's why, you know, I'll do the plug, and I know that you guys have all heard this plug. It's kind of why we started Racers 360. At the end of the day, coaching has to be personalized, right? We give the guidelines, but every situation's different. It's good to have a foundation, but make sure you're getting coaching, whether it's with us, whether it's with Randy in person or anybody else in person that is of quality. Go seek quality coaches. It's the only like big thing I would say. But every situation's different, and there's always nuances to it. So coming from Francois, I believe, I hope I pronounced your name correctly. How do you guys deal with an aggressive driver that wants to pass you at any cost? Do you bail every time and let it go, or do you try to stay with it? How do you deal with that?
2 answers. One, if a driver's dangerous enough and I don't want to hurt my car, you know, I'm not here for that, I let them go. That depends. They got to be really dangerous. 2, and much more favorite for me, is I use that aggressiveness against them. I try to suck them in. I try to get them to make a move that is not wise, usually too far inside, too late on the brakes. And an aggressive driver will often try that move down the inside that's not going to work, and get rid of them that way.
Yeah. I would say, I mean, I look back to in my career, and obviously more on the endurance side of racing, which is always a little bit different than sprint racing. I know Randy has a lot more experience than I do on the sprint side of stuff, which I'm jealous of. I really miss sprint racing. You know, I look back and I remember the year that we won the 24 Hours of Daytona. I'll never forget, there was a restart at like 3 in the morning, and Olivia Beretta came from like 5 car lengths back into turn 1, shoved it down the inside, and I just let him go. And I never forget, actually, I'm sure you remember Greg Fordall. You worked with him a lot. He was our engineer. I love Greg, but for whatever reason, maybe he was cranky at 3 in the morning, was screaming at me for letting him go by, which I was like, who the hell, like, it's 3 in the morning, there's 12 hours of racing left, we went from first to third, who the hell cares, right? So I would say have context of where you are. Last lap, I'm driving that driver very different than if there's an hour to go in the race, if there's 30 minutes to go in the race, or if there's 20 hours to go in the race, right? So just have context of, don't lose sight of the big picture is what I would say.
I would say that Beretta was to a certain extent taking advantage of that situation, saying those guys are going to move.
Yeah, totally, right? Yeah, I'm sure he was. And I know there's so many drivers, like the one driver that I hated racing with was also like Juan Pablo Montoya, because he was so over the top aggressive, but he's an unbelievable driver and get away with it, you know? And there's certain drivers that are able to get away with it, but there's always a line, and they go right up to that line. Sometimes they nibble it over and over it, but they're not way over it either.
Live by the sword, die by the sword.
Yep.
In the end, it's who's leading. But when you're a regular runner in a series, you definitely want to be known as somebody you can't push around.
Yeah.
You won't take any crap.
Yeah.
And that was something that was good for me. I mean, if you've never met me, I'm a really nice guy. I'm not so nice in the car. Don't mess with me in the car. And that's a threat. Yeah. And every driver has to have that element of threat where, like, you know, if I mess with that guy, it could get ugly. And I call that protecting your turf. And it's another fine line, you know, because it always seems like the guy that hits back is the one who gets in trouble.
True for many things in life, right?
Yeah, but you need to be constantly aware of that, and part of that comes from experience. And you need to protect your turf, but not sacrifice yourself in the process. Yeah. And that requires emotional control. You need to be like a hitman. If you get angry, turn that into focus to drive well, not anger where you're the red mist.
Yeah.
Turn it into your driving focus. One of the best laps I ever drove was in 1987. This guy locked him up behind me. I saw the tire smoke before he hit me, ran into me, turned me around. I got back on the road and I reeled him in about 3 laps, driving the best I have ever driven before or since in my entire life. Very angry, but focused. I'm going to get that guy. And when I got to him, he knew it and he felt it, and he pulled out of the way and waved me by.
That is
like, oh, yeah, go ahead.
Just let's go.
He knew.
Yeah. So just a comment here from Steve, kind of chiming in our racecraft conversation. And what he was saying is, I think if you've done and are comfortable with HPDE driving, try budget endurance racing. Lots of track time, all with different kinds of speeds and drivers. I think that's a great comment there. There's so many great series out there now. I mean, NASA does great stuff. SCCA does great stuff. AER does great stuff. WRL does great stuff. It's a good time to be kind of enthusiast racers in the U.S. There's just so much great out there. My only input is don't spend much money on the car. Get a car that other people race, so no matter where you go, you have someone to race.
An old BMW.
An old BMW. You can't really go wrong with it. We work with a lot of Spec E46 drivers, and there's great racing. So last 2 questions here. Just jumping back to Jeffrey's question he just answered. He was talking about the CODA video, and if Angelica could have made the outside maneuver going into turn 11 or overtaken to the right. What do you think, Randy? Would you have liked to have seen maybe going to the outside here versus this inside move?
No, I wouldn't have done that. Number one, I don't know about the traffic ahead of that first white Miata. And you have to now cut down across in front of this guy who's braking early, and for me is kind of a question mark. I would still go inside there for sure. It's just trying to get more than one car is risky. And you got to play it by ear. When you're going into a crowd of cars, don't go into a crowd of cars in full ABS commitment because there's too many variables down there. It multiplies your vortex of danger because you have all those variables. You don't know if that white Miata is going to decide, hey, I think I can get this Civic here and do exactly what you just did. And here you come, dive bomb screaming down the inside, nowhere to go. And that might be what you say to the steward. Hey, I had nowhere to go. Well, how far did you push it on your way in? You know, don't get greedy.
Yeah.
Unless you know for sure that you can go by all three of them.
Yeah. I would just say, and maybe I over push this, but I avoid overtaking on outside at all costs. If I have any opportunity to get to the inside, I go to the inside because as soon as we are alongside this car, it's my corner. And in a corner like turn 11, and this might go against a little bit what Randy said earlier, but like we talked about, there's nuance to this. In a corner like turn 11, we can turn later. Turn 11 at Dakota is not the downhill at Lime Rock where there's one line. So when I'm on the inside and I'm alongside, this is now my corner. And I can just drive a little bit deeper before turning in, make sure they're out in the marbles, still giving them room, but make sure they're out in the marbles, and then turn in. So now I have a much better opportunity and I'm in control. Anytime you're on the outside, you're very reliant on that guy on the inside or woman on the inside, and you're not in control. And I think most of us are control freaks when it comes to racing.
Oh, Dion, very good. I love that. I got spun out by a jerk who didn't like it when I did that to him. I didn't touch you. Haven't you ever heard of taking the line away? Nobody says you have to turn.
Yeah, exactly. It's an art.
Right next to them and take them a little bit deep, and then you turn, and they're forced to let off behind you.
Yeah.
Okay, guys. I'm talking about strong drivers. I did that to a guy, and he drove off the road. He only went off 2 wheels. And he said, you ran me off the road. I said, no. You went on the throttle where you always do when there was a car in the way. You had to let off, and you didn't. It's not my fault you didn't let off.
Yeah. So last 2 questions here, Randy, and I think you're going to really like the last one. I think everyone will like the last one that really is pretty familiar with your career. I had a good giggle at it from Frank. So before we get to that one, last serious question I would say, when you start to race a new setup on the car, probably even a new car, how do you quickly adapt to the new setup change in that car? Do you really think about the new setup change while driving, or do you change your driving style accordingly?
If you know you've had a setup change and you're going back out on track, you are now a test driver. So you have to approach the first 2 corners more gently, slower hands, and take it up a notch at a time. When you've made a setup change, do not go into the first corner or 2 max speed like you were before. See what you got. You got to feel what you got and come up notch by notch, a little bit at a time. Don't take 3 laps to do it, but take 3 corners. Get a feel for it. And then you'll know what you got, and you can learn to deal with that.
Yeah. I would just jump on that really quick and say, when I have a new setup change, I'm trying to drive it the same way. I'm trying to drive it the ideal way of driving a race car, because the goal of a setup change is to adapt the car to do what I want to do as a driver. So you can't always get set up to work, and this is a topic that we could talk for hours on. I would just say, make sure you're not doing setup until you're sure that you've done everything that you can do as a driver to get the balance that you want out of the car first. Then when you're doing a setup change, I want to drive the car how I want to drive the car. And if the car doesn't do what I need it to do, I either come in for another setup change, or I have to only then adapt my driving. But if you change your driving every time you do a setup change, well, then you don't know if the setup change was any good or not. So the final question here from Frank. Randy, would running a Volvo be a good choice for racing?
Terrible choice. Do not run a Volvo.
I know that was a question we all wanted to know.
Yeah, unless you like development. And
Not many racers have won more races in a Volvo than you. I don't know if any have, actually.
in Sweden.
In Sweden, yep.
But the thing about a Volvo is it's great to be in something unique, but it all depends on what you want to do. And part of the reason I run a Volvo is because it's unique. It's not another effing BMW or Miata or Porsche on a higher level. And also because I used to race for Volvo. I drove for Volvo for 7 years. And so I've got a warm spot in my heart, and they're cool. They're a rear drive. They got good steering, good brakes. They got a strong red block P230 engine. By strong, I mean reliable, not powerful.
They're not going anywhere very, very fast unless you're in it for the most part.
Well, that's part of the challenge. We make it faster and faster.
Awesome. Well, look, thanks for everyone for coming out and joining us. And Randy, thank you for joining us as well. I know how everyone in our sport looks up to you, and having your knowledge and your passion for it is special for all of us. So thank you for your time, and hopefully we can have you back on in the future for more of these.
Thank you very much, Dion, and special thanks to everybody that signed up tonight. It was a good time, and I hope you got something out of it, and you watch out for that Vortex of Doom.
Absolutely. Have a good night, everyone.